ahead and get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum for our September meeting. Excuse me, September meeting. It's the August meeting of the Tennessee Technology Corridor Development Authority. You've got in the packet the minutes from our last meeting, so if you'll take a look at those, and I'll entertain a motion for their approval if someone's ready.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Is there a second? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion before we vote on the minutes? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. All right, going to our first item under applicants for certificate of appropriateness. This is item 7-B-23-TOB, Sanders Pace Architecture. This is on the east side of Sanctuary Lane, north of Dutchtown Road, and south of Bob Gray Road. This is for a building permit in the PCTO zoning district in County Commission District 3. So we can get a staff report, please.
The applicant is requesting approval of a memory care facility with an area of approximately 49,575 square feet, consisting of 80 rooms on a 15-acre site, north of Hardin Valley Road, east of Pellissippi Parkway, and on the west side of Regan Road. Oh, Apologies for that.
The applicant is requesting approval of a beer brewery with an area of approximately 23 square feet. The site is located on Sanctuary Lane, which is off Dutchtown Road to the north and runs parallel to Pellissippi Parkway. These 8.08 acre site is zoned PC in the TO overlay. Brewery is allowed in PC, but requires approval by the Planning Commission, and a request for development plan approval of the plans is on the September Planning Commission agenda. The development abuts a single-family detached residential subdivision to its rear, which is the eastern side of the site. The proposed building has a small footprint, so deliveries would be made by smaller trucks or vans instead of large semi-tractor trailers, as is frequently seen by this board. The existing vegetation along the northeast property line shared with a single-family residential neighborhood provides a visual buffer to the site, and the proposed additional commercial building on an existing commercial site is not expected to have any adverse impacts on the surrounding area. So this is going to be an infill development. As you can see, there's kind of a hatching on the existing development that's there. So the proposed brewery will share the site. Both buildings combined comprise an area of 5,148 square feet, which is consistent with the zoning ordinance. Access would be shared and remain off of Sanctuary Lane. It would utilize the existing circular driveway as the existing building. Sanctuary Lane is a local road. It extends just a short distance off Dutchtown. No traffic is going to be diverted through residential areas. So kind of looking a little bit more closely at the site plan, the proposed ground area coverage, floor area ratio, and impervious area ratio are all in compliance with the design guidelines. The Ttcda guidelines require between 5 and 8 parking spaces for a building in this use and this size, and applicant's proposing 8. And the proposed building is within all the required setbacks, including the 100-foot setback required at shared residential lot lines. Looking at the elevations, the building facade features wood siding and cementitious stucco. The entry consists of a storefront system, and the building has a flat roof. And there is signage shown on the building, but it's for reference only, just to be clear that there's no signage proposed at this time. If it is desired in the future, it would have to be submitted as a separate application. The rear is just kind of more the same, but this slide does show the relationship between the proposed building and the existing building. So you can see there's going to be sort of 2 levels to it. And then the side elevations are there as well, just showing that same pattern and same materials as the other 2. And then digging into the landscaping plan, it includes plantings and beds around the building, in addition to 2 beds on either side of the parking area. The proposed beds meet the TTCDA requirements for square footage and the use of evergreens. There's only 2 trees proposed, so the mix of trees isn't as critical to site planning diversity. Typically, we want to see a mix of small, medium, and large, but that's not really applicable here. Also, in the guidelines, 10 trees are required per acre of yard space. With the site being 8.08 acres, they would need to plant 80 yard trees. However, the TTCDA does allow a reduction of trees when existing trees are preserved. And in this case, there's numerous trees onto the southeastern side of the site, and then along the northeastern part of the site where it abuts residential. All of those can be counted as well. And so staff feels like the existing vegetation is sufficient, particularly since this is an infill site and not a brand new from scratch development. However, there is no landscaping providing at the entry, and staff recommends that this be included. And we've added a condition to this effect so as not to hold up the approval, but maybe they could add a little bit of landscaping at the entry to the site for staff to approve as part of the permitting process. So that's staff report condition number 6. And getting into the lighting plan, it includes a mix of light poles in parking areas, building-mounted sconces along the building facades, and a pair of ground-mounted landscaping lights. The proposed fixtures are full cutoff and use LED lighting. The plans identify the maximum lighting level on sidewalks as 4.1-foot candles. Staff looked at this as being near a building entry area, which does allow up to 5-foot candles, and that's at the rear of the entry. In light of that, the lighting plan meets the TTCDA guidelines. And so we're recommending approval with the normal conditions plus that 6th condition for the staff-approved landscaping at the entry. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, anybody have questions?
I just had a comment. Michelle, do you think that the vegetative buffer is adequate since it abuts a residential neighborhood? That's my biggest concern here,
Right.
is that we're protecting that community.
Right. So the minimum that's required by the Type A dense landscaping in the Knox County zoning ordinance is 15 feet. This one measures at around 23, 24 on the KGIS, so it's over what's the minimum that's required.
Great. That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? I do have one question, I guess sort of procedural, since you mentioned the landscaping. Who's here from behalf of the applicant? Is anyone here from the applicant, Sanders Pace? Your turn to things. Okay. I'll ask my question. But Michelle, you've attached a condition to the staff recommendation on submitting a landscape plan before the certificate of appropriateness is approved. And so I guess you understand that, correct? And if you'll come up and give your name and address for the record. So.
Right, my backward, is that? My name's Jared Eisenhower. I'm here from Sanders Pace Architecture, the applicant for this project. And sorry, do you care to repeat the question about the landscape plan?
Staff is recommending, you all needed to submit a landscape plan to have the package complete, as I understand it. And so what staff is recommending to not hold up the approval today is that they're fine if we attach a condition to the approval that requires you all to submit a landscape plan back to her before she can issue the certificate of appropriateness on the project. So I just want to make sure you understood that and are aware that they're going to need a landscape plan that complies with our conditions.
Across, sure,
Yeah.
sure. And so we had submitted the initial lighting, or sorry, landscape plan, and just a revised version of that to show it all in the same place. Okay, we can do that.
We could do administratively, not to hold you guys up.
Okay,
Okay, you good with that?
yeah, that
Okay,
works.
great. That's what I need to know, just make sure everybody was on the same page if we approve this condition, make sure that wasn't going to throw you for a loop or there was any confusion about what needed to happen. So, okay, did you have anything else you wanted to add to Michelle's presentation?
I do not. I believe everything was good. Yeah,
Okay,
great. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
And we've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. And the motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item, this is John A. Anderson Site, Inc. is the applicant. This is item 8-A-23-TOB. This is on the west side of Reagan Road, north of Hardin Valley Road. It's also for a building permit in the TO zoning, technical overlay zoning district. Up to 10 density units per acre, I think is the recommendation and or the request. And this is in County Commission District 6. We could get a staff report, please.
It's 1 second, Mr. Chair, please, sorry, Naomi. The applicant is present by Zoom.
Oh, okay, great.
John Anderson.
John, glad to have you.
The applicant is requesting approval of a memory care facility with an area of approximately 49,575 square feet, consisting of 80 rooms on approximately a 15-acre site, north of Hardin Valley Road, east of Pellissippi Parkway, and on the west side of Reagan Road. The subject property abuts single-family residential uses to the north and west, commercial, office, medical, public quasi, being a church, to the south. This property is also adjacent to an existing assisted living facility. In this view, you can see the joint driveway as well as a few of the residential properties and the existing pond with the existing vegetation, which will be remain in place. The 15.08 acre site is zoned PR up to 10 dwelling units per acre and is in the TO or technology overlay area. Memory care facilities are allowed in the PR zone but require use on review by the Planning Commission. This item is scheduled for August 10th Planning Commission meeting. As shared previously, there is a shared driveway, an existing assisted living facility to the north, to the west, and the rear of the side is an existing stormwater pond. The proposed ground area coverage, floor area ratio, and impervious area ratio are within the maximum allowed by the design guidelines. In this area, there's supposed to be a 100-foot setback, and the applicant is requesting a waiver to reduce it to 60 feet. Staff is supporting the waiver of approval because the space functions more like a multifamily development with less traffic and is not a typical commercial development in the Ttcda area. The parking was reviewed as an assisted living facility under the Knox County zoning because the Ttcda guidelines do not address the specific use. The use to use the Ttcda would cause a massively overparked facility. Therefore, staff support the waiver to reduce the minimum Ttcda parking requirements from 99 to 68 spaces to comply with the Knox County ordinance, which only requires a minimum of 40 spaces. The building facade features a mix of masonry and fiber cement siding, and additional design features include an entry portico with a cupola and weather main. HVAC equipment will be shielded as is identified here on the east side elevation. The plan demonstrates a 15-foot non-disturbance area along the shared residential lot lines, which is the minimum required by the Type A dense landscaping screen in the Knox County zoning ordinance. The applicant proposes to preserve the existing vegetation north of the existing pond and along the residential homes. Additional vegetation and trees will be planted as required by Ttcda guidelines. The overall experience of the property there will be adequate plantings along all entryways. The applicant proposes to preserve the existing vegetation and will plant a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees. The proposed lighting includes full cutoff fixtures, including 12-foot, or 20-foot, sorry, LED sight poles and neutral LED bollards to illuminate the parking lot and sidewalks. The light fixtures meet the requirements of the Ttcda guidelines. However, a number of waivers are required to increase lighting levels throughout the parking area adjacent to the building. Staff supports the approval of these waivers due to the unique nature of this facility. There will be a large percentage of visitors who are elderly, visiting spouses, residing at the facility. The increase in lighting levels will help elderly drivers better navigate the site in vehicles and on foot. The following waivers will be required. Increase the lighting levels at building entries from 5-foot candles to 14.3. Increase the lighting level on sidewalks from 1-foot candle to 20-foot candles. Increase the lighting in parking areas from 2.5-foot candles to 12.8. Increase the lighting level at the entry drive from 1-foot candle to 12.9-foot candles. This table represents foot candle comparisons as a point of reference. So this is an example of residential housing and foot candle levels, and this is representative of if you were outside and what those foot candles represent. Sorry, it capped off. The proposed yard sign is 6 feet in height, and the sign's message area has an area of 17.5 square feet per side, or 35 feet total. The sign structure measures approximately 78 square feet, which exceeds the maximum allowed for a sign structure, which is to be capped at 1.5 times the message area. The applicant needs a waiver to increase the sign structure from 52.5 square feet to 78 square feet. Staff supports the waiver since the sign is set so far back from the street and is therefore less visible. The sign structure features masonry to match that of the main building. Staff recommends the following actions on the required waivers from the design guidelines. Approve the waiver to reduce the required 100-foot setback within the when the property abuts a residential zone, since the proposed use is similar to a medium-density residential development and would retain a non-disturbance area. Approve the waiver to reduce the minimum number of parking spaces from 99 to 40 to allow compliance with the Knox County zoning ordinance standards and avoid larger parking than necessary. Approve the waiver to increase the lighting levels as listed below due to safety concerns, in particular relating to the unique nature of the facility. Building entries from 5-foot candles up to 14.3. On sidewalks from 1-foot candle to 20.5. In the parking areas from 2.5-foot candles to 12.8. And in the entry from 1-foot candle to 12.9. And staff recommends the approval of the standard 6 conditions. Oh, and I am open to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Making sure you were finished. Any questions for staff?
I do want to bring to the body's attention and just ask for their input as well. I'm concerned where it abuts the residential properties where they are not keeping the vegetative buffer, which seems to be, like, if you go back to where you can see the retention pond.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to keep all of that vegetative buffer.
Yeah,
But the building is in the southern portion, correct? The new
Correct.
building. And what will be the setback for that portion?
so that will be the 60 feet.
That's the 60.
Oh, It would be 35.
Because you can see where the building will actually be, it's abutting several
Oh, so
residential
from
homes.
here to here. Yeah, I believe, so the plans have not been updated to reflect the 60-foot setback. The plans still show the 35,
Okay.
but that is one of the conditions for approval, is that it would be 60 feet back.
Okay, just as long as we know that that's in the record and it will be updated, because that does concern me on that side. I would like to hear anyone else's input on that.
Does the existing vegetation, the existing the existing vegetation that we see on the screen, is that within inside the 60 feet, or where is the 60-foot line?
I think that would be a great question for the applicant, because I don't know those exact dimensions off the top of my head.
We checked them out.
This is John.
John? Here you go.
Yeah, Mr.
This is John Anderson,
Yeah, there you
Site
go.
Incorporated, 10215 Technology Drive. In that area where the building is, we have preserved those existing trees in that buffer.
Do you have an idea of what the depth of that is?
I should right click on KGIS. Looks like worst case, it's around 50 feet.
So in looking at the plans, it looks like they have a peripheral boundary drawn on the site plans, sheet C.4, which is the site layout plan in your packet. That's showing the peripheral setback of 35 feet where that hits for the PC. And that seems to align pretty closely with the pinch point of the landscaping nearest where the cross part of that building is, below the detention pond. So obviously, I think that's going to be bigger along the detention pond, buffering people from sort of the north of the vision of it. But the people that are directly across from that, it looks like it's about 35 feet. And 15 feet is the minimum that's required. And I do think, too, because this facility isn't going to be getting massive deliveries and things like that, it's going to be a low-traffic area. I think there's not going to be a noise concern like you would with some uses.
Michelle, I have a question. So the zoning, what's the zoning ordinance allow?
15 feet is the minimum. There have been times as staff we've recommended higher, but not in this case.
But John is showing a 35-foot peripheral.
It's not what I can't tell what the dimension is on here that's drawn. It's crossed through, but when I look at the other page and I see the where they've noted all the setbacks in the drawing, there's one that's a dashed line that indicates where the PR zone's 35-foot peripheral setback is, and that seems to align pretty closely with the edge of vegetation where they're grading on the site.
Which I have to say, the Morning Point, which this is, I think, is going to be kind of an extension of that. This is a very much a need in this community and all around Knox County, and they do a really, really fantastic job with the whole design. It very much feels like it fits into the community, so I have no doubts about that. And I just want to say thank you for bringing this to this community, because, like I said, it's really needed.
I have one more question, Michelle. Have you had any discussions with the applicant related to a 60-foot buffer?
I have.
So I guess my next question is, the applicant okay with a 60-foot buffer?
Well, I think it's not a buffer, it's the building setback.
Okay.
We're not asking for a reduction in buffer. It's reducing the building setback from 100 down to 60.
Okay. You're good with that, John?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to approve and second for staff recommendations, which would approve the waivers as well. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, Mr. Anderson, thanks for joining us by Zoom. Worked
Thank you.
pretty well. Kept you from coming down here through the storm.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, we're on to other business. Do we have a report of administrative approvals? Do we have any of those?
No, there was one administrative application that we had last month that they have revision comments, but they've not returned the revision back, so that one's still pending. So the only other item that we have is the discussion of the TTCDA's postponement procedures.
And Commissioner Frazier asked me, what was it, Kim, 3 months ago maybe, to get this on the agenda. And this was at her request. If you want to talk us through what your
Sure, this is
purpose
something that we're really just trying to align all of the postponement procedures for Planning Commission and any other body that relates to zoning or land use. And so this was one that really didn't align with what Planning Commission's policies were. And so I just wanted to discuss it here and see what you all thought. We do get feedback from citizens that they would like postponement proceedings for TTCDA to follow Planning Commission, because a lot of times citizens will attend either for or against or just with any sort of comment, and it might have been postponed and it was very late notice to them. And so this is just really to kind of bring everything in alignment. Just wanted to get the body's feedback on what they thought and just bring it up for discussion.
All right. Kim, I appreciate you doing that. In concept, I think I agree with it. I mean, I think anything that makes for the general public consistency in the way the various bodies that they have to interact with and deal with makes a lot of sense to me. So I think in spirit, I support what you're looking for. So I guess we could walk through what we currently have in our statute versus what you've got a copy of what the Planning Commission's bylaws are, and they are somewhat different. So I don't know if you want to walk us through that, or Mike, do you want to do that?
Sure. Okay, so the TTCA board basically has a very liberal policy. The thing that the paragraph B is important. This board is required to act on applications within 60 days, although that can be waived by the applicant. So you couldn't have members of the public coming in, or even the board, and postponing it 90 days down the road unless the applicant agrees. The Planning Commission, as you can see on their rules, requires that the applicant apply, by writing or email no later than 3:30 p.m. on the Friday immediately prior to the meeting date. So, for example, if somebody wanted to postpone the meeting today, they would have had to have notified somebody by Friday of last week. And then after that, the Planning Commission can, I think you only get one, right? And then the Planning Commission can, of course, if it wishes, defer. But what this is an administrative process. So if you notify Dory or staff that you want to postpone it, then you do it by Friday, and there's no action required here. Now, that would not prevent an applicant from coming to the meeting and saying, I'd like a deferral, but that would require a vote by the body. So I don't see any problem with aligning those things and having them go the same way. But would that cause any heartburn for Planning Commission?
Probably not. Or for TTCDA, No, typically by that point, we have everything buttoned up or know if there's going to be issues. So we would be able to notify the applicant if we're going to be recommending postponement, what all was going on and get that, I guess, path of discussion in writing prior to that 3:30 deadline, the Friday before. And of course, this body meets on the Monday before the Planning Commission meeting. So that's the the Friday deadline for Planning Commission gives almost a week. Friday deadline for TTCDA would only give a day. So actually, I think it probably still works pretty well for the smaller nature of this meeting agenda, if that's okay with you all.
If I may ask a question, since they typically come to me too, are we talking about automatic postponement or just a regular postponement?
I was referring to automatic.
Yeah, it would be, if they get the request in by email to your office by Friday, the Friday before the meeting, it would be an automatic postponement.
Michelle, would we want to back that up just because we meet that Monday?
That's what I was just kind of mentioning. I think the Friday is,
Pretty last minute.
it is pretty last minute, and you guys already have the packets by then. But we have such a smaller agenda. It's typically maybe 4 or 5 applicants. And I don't know that postponements are really as frequent as they are for the Planning Commission. So I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. I could see backing it up a little bit, but I also see that would probably make it a little bit harder for us administratively just because of the nature of the deadlines of that's kind of when we're putting together our Planning Commission staff reports, doing our reviews and things like that. So the timing of it is maybe a little bit awkward, but we'll do whatever you guys want us to do.
Would it be better if it was the Wednesday the week before rather than the Friday?
Yeah, that could work. We could make that work.
I mean, would that be?
Yeah, again, if I may, one of the reasons that we had backed it up, it used to be Monday for years, and we'd already posted the agenda. So for Planning Commission to get an automatic postponement, that gives us time to get it on the agenda before the agenda is actually posted, so that the public has almost a week to get up there and see that that item has been postponed.
Yeah, that's true. So in this case, if it's already been posted, for us to put that little AP designation next to it, indicating that there's been an automatic postponement, we would probably have to revise the agenda and then repost. So
Why don't you just do it a week before?
we could do that too.
So just a week before or Tuesday, the week before. What is today, Monday? Can't even remember. Monday, right. It's been a long week.
It's already Monday.
Because the applicant could still show up in person and do it.
We could do that.
So Kim, would your recommendation be for us to adopt the bylaws, the Planning Commission bylaws, just with a revision on make the automatic proposal be 3:30 on the
Monday prior
Monday
to.
immediately prior to our meeting? Okay.
Yes, that would be great. I'll make that motion.
We've got a motion to amend our bylaws related to the postponement procedures,
I'll second.
and we've got a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, hold on just a second. Let me actually read everything. So I guess, the question is, we're dealing with plats and different things in this, dealing with it. So I don't know, the language of this, is everything in the language, because that's what we're adopting? Is this in keeping with, whenever we start talking about, where's it at? Number 2, the second sentence, provided, however, any application for final subdivision plat approval may not be postponed without the concurrence and consent of the applicant.
I was just anticipating that we would incorporate the language in subparagraph 1 where our subparagraph A is. So the rest
So-
of it I wasn't gonna put in unless you think it needs to be in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I need to amend the motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
good. You want to state that for us?
Motion to amend the postponement of an application to include the commission action postponement item 1 to replace item A in section 1.
But appropriately worded, because that talks about Fridays. We'll get it worked out.
And the second, you're okay with that? Okay. So we've got I guess, an amended motion, same as properly amended motion and properly seconded for action. Everybody understand what we're trying to do here? All right. Any other questions or discussion?
Yep.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Kim, thanks for bringing this to our attention. I think it's a good thing for us to do. So.
Just a real quick point of, for next meeting, if you don't mind me interrupting. Next month is going to be our annual meeting, so that's when you guys will get the annual report. It's also the election of officers for Ttcda, so just be thinking about who you may want to nominate as chair and vice chair. Also, an update, the legislative documents have come from the state legislature appointing 3 new members for Ttcda, so we will have a full board at that time. So the September meeting, if David is kind enough to agree to chair that for us, because technically your term is over, but that would be when we would elect essentially the new chair and vice chair to start over for the new Ttcda year.
All right. Well, it'll be a sad farewell. All right. Any other items before the body? If not, we're adjourned.